It's 1943. The Reich is bleeding men, machines, and time. Cities lie in ruins. The Eastern Front burns, and the Allies are closing in from every side. But inside Germany's factories and laboratories, another war is being fought. One of ideas, of invention, of desperation. Engineers are told to build miracles, weapons that can turn back the tide, weapons that can change the course of history. Forget what the documentaries told you. World War II wasn't a story of perfect soldiers and flawless machines. It was chaos made of metal and brilliance born from fear. These were the weapons that didn't just fight a war, they redefined it. From rocket bombs that screamed across the sky, to rifles decades ahead of their time, to tanks that became legends long after their empire had fallen. No glorified tales, no propaganda, just the raw mechanics of power and the men who tried to wield it. So steady your breath. Listen for the roar of engines and the scream of steel, because these are the 10 German weapons that changed World War II forever. Number 10, the Panzerfaust, the one-shot tank killer. By 1943, German infantry were running out of options. Tanks ruled the battlefield, and the men on foot were running out of ways to stop them. The Soviet T-34 was unstoppable in the east. The Sherman dominated in the west, and anti-tank guns were too heavy to move fast enough. So Germany built something simpler, something brutal, a single-use weapon that turned any soldier into a tank killer. It was called the Panzerfaust, literally the armored fist. A steel tube, a wooden stock, and a shaped charge warhead that could punch through almost any armor on Earth. No training, no crew, no second shot. You fired once and hoped it was enough. Cheap, fast, and terrifyingly effective, the Panzerfaust flooded the front lines. In the ruins of Warsaw, the forests of the Ardennes, and the shattered streets of Berlin, soldiers waited in silence until the enemy came within 30 meters, then fired and vanished in the smoke. For a brief moment, the balance of power shifted. Tanks that once ruled the battlefield began to fear the rubble itself. Every window, every ditch, every cellar could hide a man with one shot capable of ending them. But it was a desperate weapon for a desperate army. Its range was short, its blast dangerous to the man who fired it, and few survived long enough to reload. Still, it worked. It gave courage and danger in equal measure. After the war, its design became the blueprint for the bazooka, the RPG, and every shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon that followed. The Panzerfaust was crude, simple, and deadly, a weapon that gave one man one chance to stop a giant. Number 9, the MG-42, Hitler's buzzsaw. Every army in World War II had a machine gun. Germany had the machine gun. The MG-42 wasn't built to impress. It was built to terrify. Firing over 200 rounds a minute, it didn't sound like a gun at all. It was a scream of metal, a ripping buzz that froze soldiers in their tracks. Allied troops called it Hitler's buzzsaw, and the name stuck. On the battlefield, its effect was devastating. A single MG-42 could pin down entire platoon. Its quick-change barrel system meant it could fire almost endlessly, and its stamped steel parts made it cheap enough to mass-produce by the tens of thousands. German squads were built around it. Every rifleman existed to feed the gun, protect it, and move it forward. When the MG-42 opened up, it didn't just defend a position, it owned it. In North Africa, the forests of Europe, and the ruins of cities, its roar became the sound of German firepower. Even when the gunner fell, another man took his place. Because as long as it was firing, the enemy couldn't move. After the war, the design refused to die. Its internal mechanics became the blueprint for the American M60, the Belgian MAG, and the modern German MG3, still in service today. The MG-42 wasn't just a weapon, it was evolution by necessity, a perfect machine for an imperfect war. Fast, relentless, unforgettable. The buzzsaw of the battlefield. Before we move on, imagine you're dropped into 1944 with one of these in your hands. Would you take the Panzerfaust for a single perfect shot, or trust the MG-42 to keep firing no matter what? Tell me your pick down below. I want to see which side you'd bet your life on. Number 8. The Enigma machine. The code that nearly won. Not every weapon fired bullets. Some fought their battles in silence, behind desks, in bunkers, and on typewriter keys. The Enigma machine was Germany's invisible weapon, a cipher device made of rotors, plugs, and wires, capable of creating millions of code combinations every single day. To the Allies, it was unbreakable. To the German High Command, it was absolute confidence. Every order, every convoy route, every attack plan passed through Enigma's circuitry. It allowed armies to move like ghosts, coordinated, unseen, unstoppable. For a time, it made the Reich's war machine look invincible. But perfection invites obsession, and in a quiet English mansion called Bletchley Park, a handful of mathematicians began to take it apart. Alan Turing and his team built machines of their own, mechanical minds that could think faster than any man alive. Day after day, they chipped away at the Enigma's secrets until finally the unbreakable broke. Suddenly, the Allies could read Germany's most guarded communications. Convoys rerouted, ambushes collapsed, and U-boats sailed into traps they never saw coming. The war didn't change overnight, but its direction did. The Enigma machine never fired a shot, but the information it carried killed thousands, and the information taken from it saved millions more. When Germany surrendered, Enigmas were smashed, buried, and burned, but their impact survived a lesson that the most dangerous weapon is knowledge itself. The Enigma machine wasn't a gun or a bomb. It was a doorway into the enemy's mind, and for a brief, terrifying time, it nearly won the war. Number 7. The V-1 flying bomb, the first cruise missile. In June 1944, a new terror began to cross the channel. It wasn't a pilot shouting over the roar of an engine. It was a machine that flew itself toward a city, a dock, a crowd. The V-1 was simple and cruel, a pulse jet stapled to a warhead launched from ramps or carried under bombers. It hummed like a giant insect. People called it the buzz bomb because of that sound. A steady mechanical wail that meant doom was coming. It had no pilot and no mercy. Set on a course and left to its fate. It did not swerve, negotiate, or repent. Thousands rained down on London and on Antwerp, each one a blunt instrument of terror and destruction. The V-1 didn't just break windows and kill people. It introduced a new kind of warfare, remote, impersonal, and persistent. Cities learned the taste of waiting, the distant buzz, the sudden silence, and then the blast. Defenses improved. Anti-aircraft guns, fighter patrols, and even brave civilians tipping them from the air. But the damage was done. The V-1 taught the world a lesson the hard way. Weapons could now reach beyond the battlefield, strike civilians at will, and be launched without a single person touching the trigger. It was ugly, crude, and terrifyingly effective for its time. And though it would be eclipsed by larger rockets, the V-1 stands as the first of its kind, the prototype of cruise missiles and the beginning of warfare at a distance. Number 6. The V-2 rocket, the first ballistic missile. Before the jet, before the atom bomb, there was the V-2, a weapon so advanced that when it first flew, it touched the edge of space. Developed in secret by Werner von Braun and his team, the V-2 was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile, a rocket that rose faster than sound and fell faster than fear. When it launched, there was no warning, no buzz in the sky, no siren, only silence. Then seconds later, a thunderclap and a crater where a street had been. London, Antwerp, Liège. Thousands of civilians died before anyone even knew they were under attack. It was terror made scientific destruction from beyond reach. Each V-2 cost more than a fighter plane, required underground factories and slave labor to build. For every rocket fired, others died creating it. It was Germany's greatest technical triumph and its darkest moral failure. But its legacy didn't end in the rubble. When the war ended, both the Americans and the Soviets raced to capture the technology and the men who built it. The V-2 became the foundation of Cold War missiles, and its creator would go on to design the rockets that carried men to the moon. The V-2 rocket was the first weapon to leave Earth, a machine built for war that opened the path to space. It proved that humanity could reach the stars and that we'd try to get there with explosives first. If you're still watching, you're exactly who this channel's built for, the ones who want the full story, not just the headlines. So, make sure you're subscribed. There's a whole world of forgotten machines and secret projects still ahead, and trust me, what's coming next will surprise you. Number 5. Messerschmitt Me 262, the jet that came too early. By 1944, the skies above Europe belonged to the Allies. Bomber streams darkened the clouds and Germany's piston fighters were being torn apart. Then, from the runways of Bavaria, something new took flight. A silver shape that moved faster than anything on Earth. The Messerschmitt Me 262. The world's first operational jet fighter, it flew at nearly 900 kilometers an hour, too fast for Spitfires, too fast for Mustangs, and armed with 430mm cannons that could shred a bomber in seconds. Allied pilots couldn't believe what they were seeing. By the time they turned to engage, the Me-262 was already gone, its twin jet engines howling like nothing heard before. But the miracle came too late. Hitler insisted it be used as a bomber, delaying its deployment for months. Fuel was scarce, parts were few, and the engines themselves lasted only a handful of hours before burning out. For every Me-262 that reached the sky, 2 more sat half-built in their hangars. It was a glimpse of the future trapped inside a dying empire. After the war, every major air force studied its design. The swept wings, the engine placement, the aerodynamics, they became the blueprint for modern jet aviation. The Me-262 could have changed the air war if it had come sooner. Instead, it became a symbol of what Germany's scientists could build and what their leaders destroyed by hubris, the jet that came too early and proved that the future of flight had already arrived. Number 4, the Flak 88, the gun that could kill anything. It began as an anti-aircraft gun, a weapon meant to swat bombers from the sky, but soldiers on the ground quickly discovered something terrifying. It could destroy anything that moved. The 80mm Flak gun became a legend. It fired shells faster and flatter than any other cannon of its time, with accuracy that bordered on impossible. At first, it guarded the skies over Europe. Then, it turned its barrel downward and changed the war on land. In North Africa, Rommel's troops hid the 80s behind sand dunes. When British tanks rolled forward, the guns opened fire, armor cracked, turrets split, and entire columns vanished in smoke. The same story repeated on the Eastern Front, where the 88 could punch through a T-34 long before the tank's crew even saw it. It wasn't just power, it was precision. The Flak 88 could knock out aircraft at 5 mm high, then pivot and shatter a tank at $2,000 BD. No other gun of the war matched that versatility. Its presence shaped battle plans. Allied crews learned to fear it, and German gunners learned to trust it above all else. After the war, its design inspired generations of artillery. It became the benchmark, the weapon every army wanted and every tanker dreaded. The Flak 88 didn't just guard the sky, it ruled the battlefield, a single gun that could kill anything it aimed at and did. Number 3, the STG-44, the first assault rifle. By 1943, Germany's war machine was stretched thin. The front lines had collapsed into forests, cities, and ruins, places where long-range rifles were useless and close combat ruled. The German army needed something new, a weapon that could fight at any distance. The answer was the Sturmgewehr, the storm rifle. It looked strange, almost futuristic, but it was a revolution. It fired a new cartridge smaller than a rifle, stronger than a submachine gun's, and it could fire single shots or full bursts at the flick of a switch. For the first time, one soldier could fight effectively in every situation. Urban streets, open fields, dense woods, it didn't matter. The STG-44 gave every man the firepower of a squad. When it reached the front, Allied troops were stunned. Here was a rifle that did everything right. It was accurate, controllable, and devastating in close combat. But like many of Germany's miracles, it came too late. Factories were bombed, resources gone, and only a fraction of what was planned ever reached the front. Still, its influence didn't end with defeat. The STG-44 became the blueprint for every modern infantry rifle that followed. The AK-47, the M16, the G36, all born from its design. It wasn't just another weapon, it was a turning point in the history of warfare, a rifle that changed how soldiers fought, how armies were equipped, and how battles would be waged for the next century. The STG-44 didn't just change the war, it changed war itself. Number 2, the Panther tank, Germany's best all-rounder. By the summer of 1943, Germany's armored divisions were facing a nightmare. The Soviet T-34 had changed everything, faster, tougher, and easier to build than anything in the German arsenal. To survive, Germany needed a new tank, one that could match the T-34, blow for blow, and still feel unmistakably German. The result was the Panther. Sleek, deadly, and built with the precision of a watchmaker, it carried a high-velocity 75mm gun that could pierce Allied armor at over 2 kilometers, yet it moved with surprising speed for its size. The Panther was balanced steel. Its sloped armor deflected shells that would have shattered earlier designs, and its suspension gave it a smoothness few tanks could match. In theory, it was the perfect machine. In reality, it was both masterpiece and liability. The first Panthers broke down constantly, gearboxes cracked, engines caught fire, but when they worked, they were unstoppable. At Kursk in Normandy and on the Eastern Front, Allied crews learned to fear the sight of its silhouette. Even the mighty Tiger couldn't combine mobility and firepower the way the Panther did. It became the model every nation studied after the war. The American Pershing, the Soviet T-54, the British Centurion, all carried pieces of its design forward into the Cold War. The Panther wasn't the most famous tank of the war, but it was the best balanced one ever built. Not too heavy, not too slow, not too simple. A perfect middle ground born in the most imperfect of times. It was the tank Germany needed from the start, and the one the world never forgot. Number 1, Tiger I, the icon of German power. No weapon of the Second World War carried a reputation like the Tiger. It wasn't just a tank, it was a myth made of armor and fear. When it first appeared on the Eastern Front in 1942, Allied crews thought the stories were lies. A tank so thickly armored that nothing could penetrate it. A gun so powerful it could destroy an enemy before they were even in range. Then they saw it for themselves. The Tiger I was a fortress on tracks. Its 88mm cannon, the same gun that ruled the skies as an anti-aircraft weapon, could shatter a Sherman or a T-34 with a single shot. Its armor, up to 120mm thick, shrugged off return fire like rain on steel. Every soldier who faced it remembered the same thing, the sound of its engine, deep and slow like something alive. But perfection came at a price. The Tiger was heavy, complicated, and slow to build. It guzzled fuel, broke bridges, and needed constant repairs. Each one cost as much as 4 Panzer IVs, and Germany could never build enough. Still, when it appeared, it dominated. Whole Allied strategies were rewritten around it. Tank crews whispered its name as a warning, and even when it was destroyed, propaganda turned its silhouette into legend. After the war, captured Tigers were tested, studied, and mythologized. Its influence lingered in every heavy tank that followed, and its legacy outlasted the empire that created it. The Tiger I was more than metal and machinery. It was the symbol of German might, a monument to brilliance, excess, and the limits of power. It terrified armies. It inspired generations. And it remains even now the most famous tank ever built. These 10 weapons reshaped World War II. But whose designs truly won it? Should we cover the American machines that ended the war next, or the Soviet weapons that survived it? Let me know in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of